But they are moving out here on the affordability train, and they can't get back. And so this is a dilemma that we are creating in this country. There's not enough money to provide enough assistance to house them here. There are not enough people who are willing to accept this as a subsidy because they don't need it now, because the private market is in fact changing the dynamics around the country. And it's amazing to me that you say all the time, you stay in one place long enough, you're going to meet yourself coming back again, same place. And the same thing happens in public policy. We may call it something different, but it's the same strategy, it's the same outcome. And we still haven't solved this issue about low-income people. How do we really provide the opportunities through programming, social programming, and others that moves them from the place where they are to a place of sustainability economically? I don't know how you do it. And it's the real challenge that I think we face. And it's becoming more and more difficult to do that. There's not enough programs and not enough resources. And see, the impact right now has been because of the war and the reallocation of federal dollars to sustain the war is taking even more money away from the social programming side. So there's even less resources to deal with these pervasive problems that are becoming even more difficult to address. And so we see what in places, we see increased crime. We see increased negative signs that we have problems in these places because of the fact that there are less resources to deal with programs and other remedies and strategies to try to address some of those issues.
One of the things I'm getting from your presentation, while not an answer, the question has not even been asked and the analysis has not been made by the people who are in positions to be doing things right now. So that it's not even in the consciousness of many people how to deal with what you just described. So if nothing else, to be able to have this conversation with politicians, city council, the road home, all of these people that are engaged in so-called rebuilding New Orleans, so that we can begin like you did back in the early 60s when you didn't know what the blueprint was. But what you did was you said, well, here's a problem, and now here's a way I'm gonna move on it. Oh, but that caused this, so now I gotta work on. There needs to be some way that this whole knowledge, and which is why you're doing this, obviously, gets into more people's hands so that it can be a part of the conversation.
Yeah, because most people don't know this history we're talking about. They don't understand where we've come to where we are now. And the thing is, when I started this work, it was, idealist, whatever I had been, dealing with a few things about place, changing the landscape of a new house or whatever. But now the complexity of what we have to deal with as urban practitioners is so different. It's so larger. I mean, we've got to be issues around environment, okay? Issues around health and nutrition, issues around cultural infrastructure, issues around transportation, housing, economic development. You just name them. It goes on and on and on. And so you have a young person who's coming out of school today who's being trained with a degree in planning or whatever, and they've learned something, but then what do they confront? They confront this thing without the preparation and tools. How do you deal with all that? And how do you put it all together in a way that creates a strategic approach to addressing the issues that are confronting a community? Because the other thing that's happened in the way we do things is we do not do things comprehensively. Okay? We still operate in stovepipes. The way we do our financing has always been, we have a Department of Housing, we have a Department of Transportation, we have a Department of Health, we have a Department of Public Welfare. We still, this is how we allocate our money, isn't it? Mm-hmm. These little stovepipes, just like this. And it goes down, and then it goes to cities who get this money.
They're in stovepipes.
Okay, and then what do? They do the same thing. Okay, and then these people who have responsibility never talk to each other. They never realize the overlapping and responsibility they have and what we have to get done. And the thing was, when you go back to this place strategy of urban renewal before, what happened in those days was that when you had an urban renewal program, not only was it urban renewal money, but this was also influencing your public works budget. it was also in publishing the other resources that were coming into this neighborhood, that they were strategically that's a priority area that we have defined, and so we're going to allocate our resources accordingly. We don't do that. When the community development block grant came along, and why it does not work the way it does to have impact in these neighborhoods, is because that what we do is it's become an instrument of the political process, which means that a grant comes into any city, New Orleans, Washington, D.C., and you got a city council, 10 people on the council, and you got a grant of $10 million, and so every one of them gets $1 million that goes to their neighborhood. Somehow. That may not be where the real issues or problems are. The issue may be in one councilman's area, who has the critical issues around poverty and unemployment and needs for things like that. But do you think the other 9 members of the council give up what they think is their fair share to give an allocation based upon needs and priorities?
Or if you're in a disaster-ridden city that has whole areas wiped out and other areas didn't get wiped out, but they want an equal share of the money.
Exactly. So you see what I'm saying? And so somehow we've got to reprioritize people's thinking and behavior. That our allocation strategies ought to be around the areas of most critical need. And it shouldn't be a matter of that I gave to this nonprofit or that nonprofit because it relates to my electoral capacity.
And also those who are in most critical need are often the most non-influential politically in terms of donating, controlling, being in a civic engagement.
And Ted, isn't that so interesting? Because we came along at a time when advocacy and voice and challenge was there, and people say nothing now. I say to people now that when I was running an urban renewal project area, and there was some issue going on in city council. I could find out today at 3 o'clock the city council was going to take an action on the agenda at 7 o'clock this evening, and I could have a busload of people downtown with placards already made, with you know what I'm saying, protesting, demanding, and now you can't even get 5 people to even come downtown and advocate for their own interests. You can't do it. I mean, and it's amazing to me that we've lost this sense of standing up for our community, and yet we have all these nonprofits that say they represent the community. Who are they? Who in fact do they represent? I challenge them all the time with that, because you can't. If I told you that I was going to beat you in your head at 2 o'clock, you couldn't even get anybody on your staff to come and protect you. You know. So we at a time we need to be really more politically engaged and aware and challenging, because when you have declining resources, it's when you need more advocacy. When everybody has enough for everybody, that's a different thing. But you don't, when you're declining resources, you need advocacy organized, you need to have it directed, you need to have people who realize that they're willing to put their resources where their issues are. So that's where we are, and that's been sort of my story.
Roy, not to translate Miguel's thinking and language as sort of vernacular, do you want to attend to some of that within that shifting sand paradigm?
Yeah.
I'd love to see that sort of.
What Miguel is doing is that he's recognizing that places are changing. That it's no longer an issue simply of let's say black and white. Okay, it's no longer necessarily an issue around rich and poor. It's all these things still operating. Okay, they're still there. But it used to be that these things were in different places in the community. You know what I mean? But now they're all over the community because you have patterns of immigration that are changing its dynamics in this place. So you have issues still about I'll call it occupancy, meaning that you still have people who are struggling along, who are staying in this community, who are low income because there's a public presence. If there was no public housing, you wouldn't find affordable housing in most cities today. So